It is time for the grand finals of the Monday Night Weekly. A best-of-5 series of course, Terran versus Protoss. Now, these two, they have played against each other about 1,000,000 times over the last few years. It's a bit of a classico at this point, with the red SCVs. The top left-hand corner of, I believe this is the new map, Tato Citadel. Playing, of course, with the Polar Bear on the main command center. We're looking inside of the main base of Clem. And all the way down in the bottom right, with the blue Protoss pieces, hailing from Denmark. We don't even know if he's a human, man. I've seen people hypothesize that maybe he's a Danish prince. I've heard somebody say that maybe he's a robot, maybe he's a Labrador. I've heard many options, but this is none other than MaxPax. Now, I did actually host MaxPax's stream after I ended my own just a few days ago. And he seemed very real. He seemed like a real person. But you know what? I've watched the Pinocchio movie. Pinocchio also, spoiler alert, believed he was a real boy. Maybe MaxPax is the same. MaxPax, of course, always a little illustrious, right? Since he doesn't go to offline tournaments. But he's still an absolute god when it comes to playing with StarCraft. By the way, I've seen the sentiment in the YouTube comment section a few times now. Let me just set the record straight, I guess, as far as that goes. Like, some people are saying that MaxPax, and this is kind of bad, right? Some people are saying that MaxPax doesn't go to offline tournaments because he's a cheater, and he can only win because he cheats. Trust me, pro gamers spend an awful lot of time looking at each other's replays, and anything that is even remotely suspicious is picked up on and then immediately analyzed to death. This is mostly something that goes on behind the scenes, but there is a 0% chance that MaxPax is actually not playing by the rules. I mean, he's playing Protoss. Some people would argue that that is... especially with the new Sonic Storm. Some people would argue that that alone is already enough to be against the rules, but generally speaking, pro gamers do study each other's games all the time, and especially somebody like MaxPax, right? MaxPax, an absolute macro beast. Pretty much the perfect Protoss when it comes to playing standard StarCraft 2. None of that craziness from, for example, Hero. None of that, like, hyper macro from the likes of, for example, Showtime. In my mind, MaxPax really is, at least when he gets the ball rolling, right? The #1 Protoss to look at. It is, yeah, somebody that is going to be analyzed over and over and over again, and anything suspicious would have popped up years ago. Now, it's going to be a Twilight Council start right now. No surprise there. I'm assuming we're going to go straight into Blink. A lot of Protoss players in this matchup have been experimenting yet again with a little bit of Stargate play. Nice micro here by Clem. Clem, by the way, has been looking quite a bit better in this matchup again over the last few weeks. When the patch was first out, I mean, Clem was very, very clearly tilted. You may remember some of the videos I did upload where he wasn't GGing, or he just sort of like danced his units around before leaving the game. He was clearly a little bit upset, maybe a bit frustrated. But in the last few, instances that I have seen Clem play TVP, he once more seems very confident. So far, this Reaper has been an absolute nuisance. Oh, it's stuck now, though. Yeah, couldn't move beyond that gateway. So ultimately, the Reaper dies, but it already wreaked quite a bit of havoc. Now, apparently, we have its little brother showing up as well. It does take 3 shots to kill one of these, and this is honestly kind of annoying, right? It takes 3 shots for a Hellion, that is, to kill a probe. So it's getting a lot of free hits in. Honestly, not a bad start right here for Clem at all. Losing everything in, once, apparently. That means we can only lose 1 Medevac and 1 Widow Mine. One of the Widow Mines is going to have to run away. Otherwise, the perfect quota is going to be denied. We'll have to see exactly what Clem has changed. So I haven't really seen too many of his games this week. But I would imagine that it's just more of the same, but slightly cleaner. When the patch was first new, a lot of Protoss players were really getting a lot of value out of Storm. Terran's dancing in it a little too much. Okay. 1 Widow Mine. Medevac looking dangerously low as well. Probe is going to sacrifice itself here eventually. Looks like the Medevac will be able to escape. It's messy, it's dirty. But I think ultimately... Oh, we have Blink. Yeah, ultimately that medevac is also going to go down. And you know what? The quota of 1... The quota of 1 is still going to hold true for a few more seconds. As Clem does end up losing the second Widow Mine. Layering the aggression up right now, though, with a Raven while building up the economy. So, Stimpak is going to be researching. We're going to see Combat Shields, which is a slightly shorter upgrade as far as the research duration goes. Is going to be starting up here in a moment. We have the Engineering Bay as well. And that means that all 3 of those upgrades are going to finish up right around the same time. Raven is arriving on the other side of the map. This is one of the big strengths, of course. Ooh, this could be big. One of the big strengths of playing against this sort of Blink Stalker opener. MaxPax, though, now finally able to strike back and get one of the very best things you can ever catch as a Protoss. He is going to pay the price. Already an anticipative move right here by Clem as he snatches 2 of the Stalkers before they can escape. But getting the Tech Lab and Stimpak denied really sets Terran back straight to the drawing board. Any timing attack that Terran wants to go for hinges on Stimpak. He's going to restart it now, but obviously it's been delayed by pretty much a full minute. Lovely work right here by MaxPax. Great snipe. Clem decides to celebrate, though, by building a 3rd command center, because he knows it is going to be difficult to go for an attack now anytime soon. Sometimes an anti-timing can sort of work, where you still move out when Stimpak now does finish up. It's going to be slightly suboptimal. But sometimes it does work out. MaxPax, though, thinking about being a little bit greedy. He's scouting with an observer. He sees the Widow Mines and the siege tanks and all the rest of it. No reason to try and get in there. New barracks coming up as well inside of the natural. I think for now, all of this makes sense. Now, MaxPax not going into Storm. At least not yet. He's prioritizing the robotics bay. So we'll probably see... Yeah, we already have charge done here. We'll probably see Colossus in just a moment. It's an expensive transition to make, but obviously he knows that he's bought himself quite a bit of time, so I can imagine we're gonna go straight into the Colossus production and when the Robo Bay is done, and then he will likely also go straight into the extended thermal lens. A lot of the Terran timing attacks are... yeah, kind of finicky to execute. If you want to go for the ranged upgrade in the Colossus especially, that's usually what makes the Colossus really good. It just takes such a long time to research, and you might not actually be able to get it done at a reasonable moment. Observer ended up getting sniped. There it is. Prism already, though, hiding over here in the top section of the map. Ready to move in if the Terran decides to move out. Clem really just taking this as a very defensive game now. This really wasn't the original plan, I don't think. He at the very least planned on going for a push before sitting at this 3rd base, but... well, sniping the Stimpak upgrade really did force his hand. Alright. Colossus is out. Colossus, of course, deals bonus damage against light. And with the latest balance patch, the Ghosts... that do require the Ghost Academy. They are now light units, meaning that they take more damage from the Colossus. Likewise as well, though. The Colossus, is still going to take quite a while because the Ghost now has 120 or 125 HP, rather. Compared to 100, which it used to have in the past. Alright, let's see. Can we really test the waters, though? It all comes down to the siege tank positioning. I don't think MaxPax has the units to break through this. If he decides to move in, those tanks are gonna tear him apart. He is warping in a couple of siege tank snipers over here. Zealots may go into the main base as well. Fair enough. I don't know if you can move in here, man. Max decides to give it a shot. Clem not really taking the bait. He is not gonna be chasing this Protoss army away, but... there is already a 5th Nexus now coming up. Little auto turret again gets dropped down on the other side of the map. Raven now itself has 6 confirmed kills. Clem instead decides to just celebrate here by going into the 2-2. MaxPax poking at his opponent. But Clem is nicely turtled up here in a position that really isn't easily broken. Okay. For a near 10-minute Terran versus Protoss, the amount of losses on both sides are extremely low. We've effectively decided to skip most of the early game, and then on top of it, also most of the mid game now. Yeah, we're already going into some of the more expensive late game transitions. MaxPax decides to plant down the Dark Shrine. Clem is securing the 4th base. And while normally he is very much so a, very aggressive, a very momentum-heavy Terran player, he likes to pile on the pressure. Not in this particular game. Snipes the Warp Prism, fair enough. Clem really taking a page almost out of Bjorn's book in my mind. I feel like this is how Bjorn has been playing a lot over the last year or so. Maybe this is the angle you're looking for? Part of this is due as well, of course, to this map. Dato Citadel is just such a... This is one of the maps that's been very new, right? So it's not really explored all too much yet, but this is certainly a map that seems to allow you to just sort of sit up on this high ground. Since the 3rd base is at the same, like, leveled plane as the natural, it seems pretty easy to just get your siege tanks in positions and protect everything. Look at this, we're already even going into Gravitic Drive. We have the Observer Speed upgrade too. So this is the Warp Prism speed, this is the Observer Speed that's queued up. MaxPax has got 91 probes. So he is just, getting so much income, he may as well go ahead and spend it on relatively frivolous things. Now this is exactly, though, the type of game that Terrans really did not like when the patch was so new. Curious to see if this is going to be any better right now for Clem, because obviously, sure, he has turtled up nicely. He hasn't really taken a whole lot of damage, but likewise, he has also completely left Protoss to do whatever they like. So MaxPax currently adding on 8 additional gateways, bringing the total up to 19. MaxPax is taking 2 expansions at the same time after already having a load of bases. Looks like we are finally going to have a big engagement here in the middle of the map. Siege tanks do have to be addressed, but I think there's plenty of stuff. Still, though, the Vikings up in the air are doing a great job. Yeah, chipping away at the Colossi. MaxPax warps in 13 new Zealots. There they are. He's been going for the upgrades as well inside of that Forge quite rapidly. Double Forge here, double Chrono Boost. He's going to finish up +3/+2 at minute 12. 5th Command Center is going to be landed right over here in the middle. We have some of those late game upgrades now also coming up here for the Terran. So this is the Caduceus Reactor, which is the Medevac regen improvement. And we'll probably have the Advanced Ballistics, there indeed it is, queued up behind it. That is the Liberator ranged upgrade. There's a few different ways as a Protoss player to try and fight Liberators. Either you go for Mass Stalker, Mass Zealot, and just try to run circles around the Liberator army. Or you go into Tempests. Now, judging by the fact that MaxPax hasn't started up a Stargate, and he hasn't gone for any Cybercore upgrades or anything along those lines. Look at him double expanding, man. He's got so many freaking bases now. He is likely not going to go into Skytles. So instead, we are playing a very Zergy approach to dealing with Terran. Effectively just, look at this, 22 gateways. 13.5 minutes in, we have 22 gateways in total. Is this the collapse, though, that MaxPax's been aiming for? Look at that, he sandwiches the army. Clem is gonna have to try and micro his way out of this. The Colossi are certainly going to fall. Planetary Fortress is nice to fall back to. MaxPax has to reconsider where he decides to fight, but look at how rapidly he can reinforce this with this many gateways. 22 gateways and just an insane amount of money. Well, you can warp in unit after unit after unit, but the Liberator numbers are now growing rapidly. We're going into the +2 attack. Stalkers now blink underneath. We have a few of them already sieged up over here. MaxPax decides to walk the Immortals around. Look at that warp in! Massive amount of Stalkers and Zealots going in. MaxPax is smelling blood in the water, but soon 6 more Liberators are going to spawn. Triple starport, pretty nice. 11 SCVs are dying, but it's relatively forgivable. Reinforcing Colossus getting over here too. Even though MaxPax's eco here is phenomenal, it's not like Clem's is terrible or by any stretch. Dude, he's just warping in zealot after zealot, recreating the Legacy of the Void opening cinematic. Except without a probe. No proxy pylon. It's the warp prism that's the pylon here. But you can see that the Liberators are doing a really good job forcing Protoss into weird directions. It looks to me like Clem actually holds this. Honestly, a phenomenal hold right there from Clem. I thought he was going to get overwhelmed. It looked like that was going to be nearly impossible. But on the back it is. Golden minerals are being brought in. We have some static defense already set up. 8 fresh mineral fields as well to mine in the top right. Honestly, at this point, MaxPax has so many workers. Yeah, he's even transferring some from, I think this is the 4th base now, to one of the more difficult to mine expansions. He is just gonna try and see if he can hammer his fist some more with Stalkers and Zealots. He does have triple Robo, so we are producing a mix of, well, for now at least, Colossi and Immortals. Obviously, you can transition as well to Disruptors from here. If you have a lot of money, Dark Templar are certainly an option too. Still, Clem is looking pretty powerful now. Like in a straight-up battle, this Terran army is significantly better. Liberators still sieged up on the high ground. No planetary here, but apparently the Liberators alone are going to be enough to scare this Protoss army away. Huge amount of Protoss as well, though, in the bottom left. But look at the Sim City here. Planetary Fortress, siege tanks. We have a lot of little choke points. Clem, I think, on purpose, lifting up that orbital command. Fight over here also in favor of the Terran. And Tato Citadel is proving to be a really nice turtle map. Recall right now on the Zealots together with that one Dark Templar. They're going to make their way back home. Back to a pylon where an additional round of units get warped in. MaxPax is trying to beat paper with rock. I don't know if it's the way to do it, man. Yeah. You can hit the paper really hard, I suppose, but this is a very powerful Terran army that in a straight-up engagement is just so freaking dominant. One really nice thing, right, for Terran in these type of scenarios is that the Terran army is still getting better. Like, MaxPax used Chrono to get those 3-3 upgrades done really quickly. But from there, you're effectively maxed. Without that Stargate transition, you're just not really creating additional value for your army anymore, moving past the 3-3. Whereas Terran's army is still getting significantly better. Look at the Liberators chasing them down. Okay. Push this one in the bottom left-hand corner. Tactical nuke coming up as well for Clem. It's another one of the things that you can mix in. Clem again at 69 workers. It is something that he repeatedly comes back to. Game after game after game. I mean, coincidence is a thing, but I do feel like I point out that Clem has 69 workers an awful lot of times. But anyways, Prism tries to see if it can use that new speed boost to get past the missile turrets. Of course, that's where the gravitic drive is so strong. The missile turrets alone are not going to be quite enough. Zealot warping in the main base as well. Only a handful of Zealots because the Protoss is maxed. You would have liked to warp in like 20 of those bad boys. It's a problem when you have so much, so many units out on the map. Dude, the choke points are too good. The choke points here allow the Terran to just chill. I think this is a Skytos map. I think if MaxPax were to be in this situation again, he would have made the transition like 10 minutes ago. Okay, maybe 8 minutes ago. Because he had all the time in the world to do so then. I believe right now it's a little bit too late. Gotta hand it right here to Clem, man. Phenomenal defensive play. Incredibly patient. It's not his usual playstyle. Normally he's a lot more active out on the map. It's not over yet though. MaxPax has got an awful lot of army. This planetary in the middle has been such a great anchor for the Terran. Orbital command is going to fall, and it looks like the planetary will not be too far behind. Actually, planetary goes down first, and somehow the orbital lives. 23 SCVs, though, do pay the price, and that is the type of thing we have to pay attention to. With only 40-something workers, Clem is going to have a very difficult time actually being able to compete with this Protoss army. When you can pretty much double the income of the Terran, obviously you can take terrible traits and still come out ahead. That's exactly what those Zealot run-bys have been trying to achieve all this time. Finally, MaxPax gets some value. He's also retaken the base in the bottom left, so those golden minerals, they're going to be juicy yet again. Top right-hand corner being rebuilt at this point in time. Already some probes are long-distance mining that position. Orbital command right now set up on the low ground. That's that orbital from earlier. Liberators, though, siege up. And there is about a 0% chance that you're going to be able to fight this right now with this type of Protoss army. Another Colossus bites the dust. I did not realize that this portion of Tato Citadel is so nicely defended, right? Like, look at the... It's not even that many units. But some clever SimCity right here from Clem, forcing those units to funnel, making it pretty much impossible for MaxPax to break through it. If we compare that to the other side of the map, I mean, it doesn't look nearly as strong. Yeah. Alright. Zealots, though, coming in yet again. The watchtower reveals exactly where these Terran units are located. MaxPax trying to dance through this choke point. Right now, he's sitting at 4,000. Okay, well, yeah, when I started the sentence. He's sitting at 3,500 minerals, but no gas. That's a problem. How in the world are you going to be able to fight this army? Zealot run-bys. I guess that's what you do. Try to force the Terran army to retreat. Now, keep in mind that the win condition in a game of StarCraft is to destroy your opponent's structures. Technically, the armies do not matter. But of course, Terran structures can fly. Meaning that Zealots alone are never going to be able to get the job done, but maybe he can force this Terran army to retreat. Clem has settled, well, at least on killing the 4th base for now. He's also going to go for the next expansion a little bit further up north. He's losing so much at home in the meantime, though, and this may just be exactly what MaxPax is looking for. A little bit of indecisiveness right now as well from Clem is not going to help him. But Clem has got the much more sophisticated army, right? Look at this, by the way. He's not rebuilding SCVs. He's sitting at 17 of those bad boys. Just replacing all of the lost workers with more army. So the Terran army value, the Terran army size is going to go absolutely through the roof. Base in the top right goes down as well. I think MaxPax is reading this correctly now, though. Does Clem know? Yeah, about the base in the bottom left, he does not. It's a safe assumption to make, because he hasn't been in that part of the map in quite a bit. He took out a Nexus there a few minutes ago, but MaxPax will be very likely to retake it the moment that you leave. But I think this may be exactly, though, where Clem wants to have his opponent. His army is just so much better. And it looks like MaxPax has been forced into taking one of these main engagements. There's a 0% chance you're going to be able to win a straight-up fight as a Protoss player here. Huh. Command Center is going to try and land on top of a Nexus. I feel like it should be able to. But apparently the game's rules dictate that you cannot. And now, we see Clem, yeah, having just such a big army compared to that of the Protoss, pretty much doubling the amount of army supply. And on top of that, he's got significantly better units than the Protoss player can really muster. The defense of this base over here has been key. The fact that the base in the left side of the map could never be broken, and then the same over here in the middle. This expansion was up for way longer than MaxPax wanted it to. Yeah, it has all led to a Terran victory. Great work by Clem. Next up, a map for all the feet lovers out there. We have 10,000 of them. Another one of the TLMC finalists. I am going to make the assumption that the map maker is American. Doesn't have to be. It could be maybe a Brit. Who knows what they use in the UK, man? They use stone. But only to measure body weight. Weird. Maybe in Canada? Do they use feet in Canada? I think they do. I think they use a little bit of... I think they use a little bit of Imperial and a little bit of, well, the normal system. They use a little bit of the normal system as well in Canada. Is there a place where they is there another place where they use feet as a regular measurement of distance? I guess in this case it's depth or height. I've always actually thought about this as like, do you use feet to like indicate the height of a mountain? Would you say, oh, that mountain over there is 10,000 feet? I mean, that's a very large mountain, but is that a thing? Would you use miles for that? Would you say, hey, that mountain over there is a mile and a half? I don't know. Either way, for some reason, 10,000 feet, whenever... I haven't really thought about this very much, but whenever I've thought about the map, I've kind of thought it's like 10,000 feet deep for some reason. Anyway. Command center right over here on the low ground, as the probe has been pushed away. The map has this little skinny mineral set right behind both naturals that leads to a pretty easy to take and tucked away third. There's some of these rocks over here that do keep this base a little bit safer. So there's a section of grass, some line of sight blockers right over here that you can break through right at the very start. And these rocks over here will automatically die off at about minute 8. So 8 minutes into the game, all of these tentacle rocks, and they're placed in many locations on the map, they do bleed out, which is a pretty new mechanic. We've had this in StarCraft 2 maps for about a year. But it allows maps to be relatively small while not increasing the cheesability on it too much, if that makes any sense. Because you can artificially increase the rush distances quite a lot with those type of tentacle rocks, and it seems to increase the amount of strategy that players go for, so I like it. The way I remember feet, by the way, is that I know there's about 3 feet, or footsies. There's 3 footsies in 1 meter. And I think every mile is about 1.6 kilometers. So I have to bring everything back to metric. It gets very confusing. But I've been streaming for such a long time, and this is going to be an embarrassing thing to admit, especially to my European viewers, okay? But I now even somewhat understand Fahrenheit. I know. You could hear almost, if you listen very carefully, a collective sigh right there from all my non-American viewers. Yeah. Miles, Fahrenheit. The only thing that trips me up is ounces. Like the fact that there's like liquid ounces and like I don't know. I don't understand that one at all. Hellion is here. And we do have a bit of variety, by the way, from Mr. MaxPax. Not opening up with good old Blinky Boys, but we're gonna go into the Phoenixes. I will say, whenever I follow along with any like recipe as I found on the internet, and they start using cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, and all the rest of it, no. Please give me it in grams. Give me anything in grams, so I can put a thing on a scale and just measure it. Give me everything in weight, please. Like, just, it's way easier. Cups. I don't know how big a cup is. What's a normal cup? When I think of an American cup, it's probably bigger than the average cup I have over here. But it's not. I don't know. What about a tablespoon? I feel like a tablespoon is also just a... I like grams. Yeah. Anyways. Not usually a problem in cooking. Does become problematic in baking, though. Anyways. So far, this early game, as you may have noticed, there's a video game going on in the background as I am giving a TED talk on the superiority of the metric system. We did have the Protoss player here picking up. Like half my viewers are American. And today I'm trying to piss everybody off. You do have maybe noticed here that there is a Protoss player picking off free stuff. Now, Clem did have a Cyclone there. A couple of Vikings up in the air as well. Sniping one of the Phoenixes, not a big deal. And we're yet again not going into charge slots, which is a very common follow-up these days. So Phoenixes into charge, I mean, it's not a weird setup. We're yet again going from Phoenixes into the Colossi. I will say that in the previous game, I don't believe that the Colossi were the problem. I think the strategy that MaxPax played was really good. It was just that the late game was incorrect for the map that we were on. And it's very likely that that was just like the first time that MaxPax had ever been on that map before. Or at least in that situation on that map before. I mean, he's definitely played the map. But most Terran players probably would have died already. So the Colossi weren't really the problem. It's just that as the game progressed, he couldn't really find value with his 22 gateways. And because of it, he ran out of steam. Only just barely. Little Reaper from the early game still being a bit of a nuisance. It is gonna get sniped. Phoenix is swooped back in yet again. Yep, so we're going to actually both charge as well as Colossi now at the same time. Clem yet again going for a relatively passive start, although a different one than what we saw in the previous game. He is going to be able to finish up the Stimpak at a reasonable time this time, but he didn't actually go into the combat shields. I think he only just now realized that he never started it up. That one was supposed to already be coming, and I wonder if that's actually forced him again into a passive match. So combat shields is 10 HP for Marines. It is a very significant thing, especially when you start hurting your own units with Stimpak. Okay. He does have 1-1 though, lined up here reasonably well with that combat shields research, so he could still go for an attack when that is done, but this is again a very passive start here for Clem, all things considered. MaxPax is like, yo, you want to come out and play? Come on, Clem. Let's come out and play. Nope. Nope, we're sitting behind our wall of siege tanks. And with clever SimCity, we're trying to play the late game. I find it quite ironic, though, that the vast majority of complaining that I hear about this matchup is about Psystorm. And first I see all those Hero games where Hero never goes Psystorm, but he only goes, well, for what MaxPax is playing again here. And now also, likewise, MaxPax is not going for any sort of Psystorm play either. There's always this disconnect between, especially what people complain about on Reddit and on the forums and Team Liquid and everything else, and what is actually going on at the highest level of StarCraft 2. Oh, look at brave little Jimmy over here. He was brave until he died. Gotta respect it. Okay. Maybe just the existence of Storm is enough, though, to scare well, Clem over here into playing this very passive approach. He's adding on his additional barracks right now. That's barracks 6, 7, and 8. He's going already into the +1 attack upgrade for the flying units. So he's again preparing to play a nice little passive late game again if he can get away with it. Is this a map, though, where you can play it as easily as he did in the previous one? I'm not so sure. This map seems to have, like, this base is relatively easily takeable, I guess, but it has a lot of entrances. This is certainly the easier 4th. Okay, let's see. Can MaxPax actually strike now that the iron is still hot? He's going into Gravitic Drive again. He's going into the Dark Shrine, so he's getting all of the late game improvements. Oh, nice lifties here as well with those Phoenixes. Taking those siege tanks out of the equation. 8 SCVs go down. Base has to be, well, at least removed for just a moment, but I think Clem is still going to be able to take it. MaxPax would love to sit out here for long enough that he can actually deny this base over and over and over again, and maybe he can actually get that job done. Attempt number 3 to land the command center. Nope. Back up again. And all the while, MaxPax is mining off of 89 workers. So MaxPax doesn't just have like a 4th and a 5th, he's even building a 6th. So he's got 6 bases done right around the time, Miss Relly, right around the time that Clem is securing a 4th. So he's securing a 6th as Clem is securing a 4th. That is incredibly lopsided. And my StarCraft brain is telling me that that shouldn't be a viable strategy for Terran. Because you just fall so massively behind, but Clem seems to, at the very least, do this on purpose. Warp it in the main base gets denied. Yeah, he's doing some really stellar defensive play. Do we have enough here as a Terran player? Look at how much money there is for MaxPax. Well, this Protoss army is just getting destroyed. Ay, ay, ay. That was so much better there for Max. What? How in the world did Clem just absolutely decimate that army? That wasn't even close. MaxPax can reinforce. That's nice and all, but he didn't have a prism nearby to reinforce in the middle of the battle. Honestly, Clem may just be smelling blood right now. This is the first time that Clem goes across the map this entire game. I mean, other than the Reaper early on, maybe a Hellion or so. I was yapping about feet. Quentin Tarantino would be proud. Anyways, is there enough right now for the Protoss to try and break through this? Viking micro is solid. Stutterstep control is also pretty darn good. Reinforcing Terran units are stimming in this direction. Big EMP as well to remove the shields out of every single one of those ghosts. Or ghosts? Zealots. There we go. Fusion core coming up. We have a 5th, a 6th command center right now as well, added into the mix. Honestly, I wonder if Clem can push. It's pretty much all Zealots. Yeah, there's 32 Zealots in the mix. And while usually we talk about the strength of ghosts against, well, for example, Archons or High Templar or whatever, right? They're really good as well against clumped up units. Keep in mind that they increase the radius of the ghost's ability. Actually, no. That's the High Templar. They did not... Sometimes I find myself autopiloting while casting. Fake news by Loco. They did not. They did years ago. That's like 5 years ago, though. Boomer Loco here is getting his words mixed up. That was for the High Templar. Does MaxPax have enough, though, to break through this now? I think this back and forth, though, is actually really quite nice for Clem. Planetary yet again. Command centers in front, making it pretty much impossible for the Zealots to get the wraparound. He's trying. He wants to break through this, but... yeah, the Zealots just can't find an angle. I don't think you can fight this, can you? No. It seems to me that Clem has really been working on his dancing skills with the Marines and the Marauders. And the Ghosts, and the Medevacs, and the Vikings. And now, the Liberators. MaxPax with a much bigger army just can't get value out of his Zealots. It's pretty clever, right? So what you do is you build up a lot of structures surrounding the planetary. And then when you see the Zealots charge, you can, for example, lift off the orbital command that they've charged on. You shouldn't lose the orbital command. But Zealots without their charge damage just really don't deal nearly as much damage. Like, they just take too long to really reach the target they're trying to fight. And it's an ability that goes on cooldown for a little bit. You could manually target the planetary fortress with charge, but if you mass repair with the SCVs in time and then hold position, for example, with the SCVs, because of the way that the AI works, the Zealots are gonna just derp out. If you hold position workers, and there is something attacking nearby, the Zealots will assume that the thing they need to attack is the thing that is attacking them back. Only if you actually turn the SCVs with an attack move, or when you're actually mass repairing, they're also considered a threat, but they're not a threat when they're just standing around. You can do so much with just this building positioning over here. Let's see, though. You do obviously have to be on top of it. Big Zealot run by in exactly the location that I was talking about just now. SCVs get over here, EMP as well. Look at the Zealots derping out. Look at the Zealots derping. Yeah, and the real strength of Zealots, right, is their A-move ability They're super powerful if you just A-move them, but likewise the main weakness of, well, the Zealot is also their A-move ability. There's just not a lot more value that you can squeeze out of the unit. Clem gets an engagement that he's looking for yet again. Colossi are dropping like flies. Only a handful of Vikings in the mix right now. He's going to have to replenish it to make it difficult for the Protoss to really make that switch up. But I think he is ready to go in for a big attack here. May as well wait a minute, though. Get those Medivacs to put in a little bit of work. He has the Caduceus reactor upgrade done, so the Medivacs will now pretty much always have energy. Takes a moment, catches his breath, goes in for a kill, sees the Nexus in the top right. Knows that there's no mining, so we ignore that one for now. We'll take it out on the way home. EMP again on those clumped up units. Keep in mind that the new Disruptor, right? It doesn't one-shot Ghost now because the Ghosts have additional HP. Not a situation that we see all too often, but Clem is just plowing through this. Big Zealot run by though, together with Dark Templar this time around. Now that may be the solution to the sniping problem of the planetaries. Maybe don't go for Zealots. Maybe go... Ooh, that was a really nice Nova right over there. Oh, is this still good enough for MaxPax? Yeah. He's going to force this Terran to a reposition. Now, apparently the positioning we go for is the main base. Is this a misplay? The SimCity here of MaxPax is actually working against him. He's planted around those gateways willy-nilly, and he doesn't have an easy way of actually getting over here. A couple of snipes. The choke point is just so bloody good. There's like one Marauder in the choke. It's kind of difficult to see. There's a bunch of ghosts over here now too. When they're being healed up, the Zealots just can't kill him. Vikings as well from the low ground. Honestly, those landed Vikings are putting in an insane amount of work too. Now we're replacing the lost supply with Liberators. Look at this. MaxPax can't break through his own main base. Without Storm, you just can't fight this. What? He gives up on it altogether? That's nuts. Wow. And so far, the games are looking pretty dang good for Clem. Honestly, this playstyle feels very unlike him. Not a lot of aggression. Not a lot of parade pushing. Not a lot of snowballing. Instead, we defend, 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 and then eventually try to overwhelm. Now, obviously, yeah, the big missing piece here for MaxPax so far in these games is Storm. Storm is just such a phenomenal ability. And yet, MaxPax has not been making it a single time so far in this series. Even though he had all the resources to go ahead and do so. And honestly, when you think about it, right? He's playing the Marine right over here. He's playing the drums. When you think about it, you could interpret the changes made to Storm as a nerf, but it seems like it's an interesting thing. If you ask Zergs, they call it a buff. If you ask Terrans, they will likely call it a buff as well. If you ask Protoss, they're about 50-50. Half the Protoss players seem to assume that the new change to Storm is a buff. The other half think it's a nerf. MaxPax was getting an awful lot of value out of Storm when the patch was first around and was first introduced, but maybe he has since reconsidered? I'm not exactly sure. Okay. We are on Andromeda. Match point already for Clem in this finals. Should be going for a wall off here in just a moment. I think going Phoenixes into Zealots, into Storm, is a really fun strategy to mess around with. We've seen it a few times so far at the absolute highest level. Yeah, Colossi seem to be quite good, but with Clever Sim City, defending the command centers and the planetaries and everything seems to be very reasonable against the mass Zealot attacks. This is the beauty of StarCraft though, right? Just about a month ago, Clem was complaining about this matchup. It seemed, at least in his point of view, pretty much unwinnable. He was started playing a lot of Protoss himself, and maybe that gave him some inspiration as to what Terran can do, but it seems like he has found a solution to the problem. So the new problem right here for MaxPax now has become, okay, if you play this style, how in the world do you kill those outer bases? Maybe it's Dark Templar. Maybe it is a shift to, for example, Tempest, right? Rather than going into like the mass Zealot Stalker style, maybe we need to just mix up the late game altogether. It's difficult to call, but if we play a similar game yet again, I think Clem is going to feel pretty darn comfortable. So far, MaxPax has been the gateway man. The gateway man with Robo. But it's not been working out all too nicely for him. It's one of those weird spots, because at some point, right, when you're playing Protoss in that spot, you are playing like 7 bases, maybe 8 bases. The Terran is stuck on 4. You are finishing up your 3-3 upgrades. You've got like 4,000 minerals and gas in the bank. You feel like you cannot possibly lose. Like, you can literally build anything you want. And yet, when you go up against the likes of Clem, they still make it look very playable for sure. All right, 5 Marines and a Widow Mine. Going to the main base. Stalker's waiting. Strange little push here, actually, from Clem. But certainly one that can deal a lot of damage. Ooh. This snatches up the Widow Mine too, I like that. Secondary attack over here at the front, so this is a delayed command center in favor of more unit production here early on. Clem is going to be bringing all of the units together. This is something we saw him experiment with about 2 weeks or so ago. This is not even a Protoss with a 3rd base, but he's still going to try and push in. Honestly, it's a really scary attack. Blink is finishing up right now. One of the gateways is going to go down. There's only 3 gates in total with, well, 1 down right now. The amount of production really isn't that great. Backup pylon already because he knows he needs to get that Immortal out. Oh, lovely little counter-attack here to pick up some of the reinforcing units, but that unsieged tank is still pretty darn good. Widow Mine gets a really solid hit of damage down too. Dude. Clem is making Terran look broken. This is the type of stuff that Protoss players look at and they wonder, what in the world do you even do against it? It's so funny. Whenever a new patch is introduced, we always go through these phases, or at least most of the time we go through these phases. Patch is first introduced, Protoss seems kind of broken. Couple weeks later, though, it seems like at the very least Clem has got MaxPax's number in this particular series.